They say there's no proof. That you're crazy for believing. But monsters are real. The following was posted to a crime forum dedicated to unsolved murders. The case in question revolved around a massacre that took place in a bar in 2015, in which various members of an organized crime syndicate were brutally murdered at the hands of Aponi. Names and locations have been changed to protect the survivors. Out of respect for the dead, the events remain unchanged. These gangster or thugs had moved their base of operations into our neighborhood and began hitting local businesses up for protection money. Protection from what? The only thing we needed protection from was them. All of our regular patrons had been chased away by these wannabe tough guys trying to make a name for themselves. They had turned the bar my wife, Delilah, and I owned into their own official clubhouse. Needless to say, they brought a lot of unwanted attraction to our bar. Drug trafficking, gun running, illegal Meninso products being moved by the ton. All this was planned at the bar I shared with my wife, Delilah. Delilah was headstrong and never wanted to give in to these thugs. I always had to keep her calm when things got heated between them. But then one night, I was out sick. I guess Delilah had confronted the thugs about the endless bar tab they were running. And there, things turned horrible. The thugs roughed Delilah up so bad with a crowbar that she landed in the hospital with 5 broken ribs, cracked orbital bone, and severe intracranial hemorrhaging. The beating had left her comatose, and the doctors didn't know if she would pull through. To make it up to me, the thugs only took an 8% cut that month, instead of their usual 10. The business was struggling. No customers. Delilah's medical bills piling up. There was no way out. Every single night I was subject to ridicule from these thugs while they used my bar to deal drugs, weapons, plan robberies, and terrorize our once peaceful neighborhood. Then Aponi came into my life. At first I thought she was a crazy woman. Was into Japanese cosplay a bit too much. She looked like a witch coming out of an anime convention, but when she saw me, she simply asked me, "What do you seek?" I drunkenly said revenge for Delilah. The night Aponi reigned was just like any other night. All the thugs were gathered at the bar. It was getting near closing time, which normally meant that I'd be pouring drinks for the lowlights for another 3 hours, but this wasn't going to be a normal night. Aponi was coming. Soon those thugs would pay for what they'd done to my wife and I. I noticed her standing against the wall before anyone else did. She watched their faces, she listened to their lewd jokes, and she decided which one of them would be her first victim. The buzz of the bar slowly fell to silence as the human pieces of filth began to notice they were not alone. She was an intimidating presence, tall and dark, with eyes like coal and skin like granite, but she still wore the same getup from our first meeting. One of them, a burly man with a scar down the side of his face, was the first to say something. "Looks like we got ourselves a weeb from the anime convention." Before he could finish, Aponi had darted across the room and snapped his neck like a twig. Everyone in the bar, including myself, could not believe what happened before us. Aponi then looked at all the thugs sitting at my bar and said, "I am Delilah's revenge." The others stood up from their seats, shock painted across their ugly mugs. She darted again once more in the blink of an eye, and now she had snatched one of the men by the throat and had lifted him off the ground. She crushed his neck like a soda can and dropped his body to the floor. The other thugs pulled their knives and guns. I ducked behind the bar and prayed if the men started shooting I wouldn't catch a stray bullet. Aponi remained still, then waved her hands as she spoke in tongues. The thugs tried to shoot her, but the bullets wouldn't fire. Every gun was jammed. Aponi smiled. She smirked arrogantly. One of the men must have realized how screwed they were, because he made a break for the door. He yanked frantically at the handle, but it wouldn't budge. The other men stood quietly as they watched their compatriot tug and jerk at the door. Aponi threw hands in the direction of the man at the door, and it caused the man at the door to violently cough. Then we saw what Aponi had done. Blood sprayed from every opening in his face, his eyelids, his ears, his nose, and mouth. The bar ran red with his blood. It's locked. When she said that, she snuck a glance at me. We made eye contact for just the slightest of moments, but that was all that I needed to know what she intended to do. Aponi was not in my bar that night, just to scare away some thugs. She was there to satisfy her bloodlust, one that would not be quenched until every single one of those men were dead. tore through 3 of the gangsters, dismembering them limb from limb before anyone could realize what had happened. Legs, arms, and heads detached from their torsos hit the ground with a thud. Blood pooled around the floor of the bar in deep crimson puddles. There was about 5 men left, and they circled her, ready to kill. Aponi just smiled. She recanted a mystic spell with a snap of her fingers. The sickening sound of bones cracking began to fill the air as 5 of the men all fell to the ground and started to scream. Aponi's snap was breaking the men, bone by bone. She continued to snap, and with each snap, the thugs' bones would splinter and snap along with her. First it was the legs, then their arms, then their necks. I watched them cry and beg for mercy as their limbs contorted in horrific, unnatural ways. It was a sight to see. 5 men being folded into clambert human origami, with Aponi at the center of all of it. "This is for Delilah," Aponi said, before she clapped her hands together. And with the thrust of her hands clapping together, each of the men's heads were flattened by the invisible mystic force of Aponi. I couldn't believe what I had seen. The thugs all dead at the hands of what I thought was a crazy woman. Aponi walked up to me, offered me her hand. I took it. She helped me up. She saw that I was shaking from complete shock. She smiled. But this smile wasn't sinister like the one she was flashing the gangsters. It was an understanding smile. She whispered in my ear, "Delilah will be just fine." And like that, she walked out of my life as quickly as she came into it. Currently writing this as I sit next to Delilah, who's on her way to making a strong recovery.
Watch new vids every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, only on Crypt TV.